My friends, Dave Paulides, CanAM Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. The executive producer is in the house, Huck. It's Huck TV, and she's been very diligent today in her work. You can tell she's huffing and puffing and happy, and she's been a good girl today. Scratch the Pyrenees head, they love that. Yes, they love that. Look at those eyes. Right there. You're such a good girl. Yes, a good girl. Thank you, Huck. And, oh, big yawn. Well, we're going to go right over to talking about missing people. And since this is a missing persons segment, I think it's important that we get right into it. One thing I don't talk a lot about is in search and rescue, the different type of people that they have to search for and classify. And I know that may seem like a monotonous thing. It's actually one of the most important things in search and rescue. So they have somebody who has dementia, and they have to search for them. Well, that's one category. Say they have an elderly person who isn't real mobile. That's another category. Say they have a child under 5. That's another category. And in all these categories, they have this criteria that they want you to search by. Now, in the book, it says that they only take data from search and rescue personnel and law enforcement. I kind of find that funny. I've been doing this kind of research now for 14 years, and I have tons of data that says that small kids have been found 10, 12 miles, I mean really small kids, 2, 3 years old, from the point last seen. But they won't take that data because it's not coming from a certified law enforcement personnel who is on duty or search and rescue. So they're just going to flush it and not even acknowledge it, which I think is a huge issue when it comes to establishing parameters to search. The same with people who may be intoxicated, under the influence. Does a person know the area? Do they not know the area? How mobile are they? Are they in good physical shape? Could they walk 10 miles? And then one of the most elusive criteria to truly understand, and I say this with all humbleness and being polite, is somebody who has autism. When you say somebody has autism, people generally think, well, there's really only one type. But there's a whole spectrum of autism. High functioning, low functioning. The high functioning people, you may not even know that they have autism if you talk to them. They just may seem a little bit off, but there's a lot of us that are a little off. So searching for autistic people can be very, very confusing. Well, that's what we're going to talk about here. A high functioning autistic person. And that person disappeared this year in September. In an area I've been to many times because of Ben. I'm talking about Minnesota. Ben went to a place called Minnesota Hockey Camp for many, many years. And while he was young, I didn't let him just go. I'd drop him off the camp each day, pick him up each day. As he got older, he got to spend the night at the camp. And as he got quite older, I just put him on a plane and they picked him up at the airport. But in the time when he was fairly young, and I dropped him off at the camp, I'd have something to do all day. Sometimes I'd go fishing because there's the land of 10,000 lakes. Other times I do research. And I did Bigfoot research up there, and I did missing person research up there. And Minnesota is quite an interesting place, quite diverse. When I tell you and you hear that they have mosquitoes the size of birds, I tend to think it might be true. I ran into quite a few. The woods are very thick and pretty darn spooky, I gotta say. Now this case involves a younger woman named Tanya Yarmakov, 23 years old. She went missing September 4th, 2024 at about noon. Now, the family was at Savannah Portage State Park in Aitkin County, Minnesota. The park is in an interesting place in my world. Now this is Lake Superior right here. So just west of Lake Superior is the park. It's about 35 miles west of Lake Superior and about 45 miles southeast of Leech Lake. I'll talk more about Leech Lake later, but the Leech Lake Indian Reservation I spent a lot of time on. Chippewa National Forest is up here. This entire region, to me, is spooky and has a lot going on. Now, Tanya traveled. She was 23. She traveled with her mom, her dad, and her older brother from their home in Dundas, Minnesota. And that's probably about 25 miles south of Minneapolis. They drove about 4 hours to Savannah Portage State Park. As a family, they had been to this park several times in the past. One of the reasons they like coming here is that Tanya knew her way around. They stayed at some cabins. The parents stayed in one cabin, and her and her brother stayed in another cabin. The family was very tight. They all loved each other. They all got along really well. Well, on September 1st, the family arrives at the park. They go to their cabins, and they dump all their stuff. And the family liked to fish. That's something in my heart. And there were rowboats that you could take out onto this little lake. Fishing was good. Hiking was fun. And in fact, Tanya loved to hike. And she often, even at home, would go out with her mom, her dad, and her brother to hike. She liked to do that. That's a picture of Tanya. So on September 4th, third day that they're at the park, at about 11 a.m., the family decides that they want to go out on the lake in a rowboat. Well, Tanya said that she just didn't feel like going. And so they said, well, do you mind if you just sit on the dock while we go out, and we won't be long, and we'll just come back? And she goes, no, I'll sit right here. So mom, dad, and brother kept their eyes on Tanya while they're on the rowboat out on the lake. Kind of got the scenario. This lake isn't huge. In fact, it's not very big at all. But it's big enough to have some good fish. And as they are out on the lake, if you can imagine this, Tanya's wearing a tie-dye shirt. You can see it really well. Gym shorts, black shoes, and she's wearing headphones. Well, as they're out there on the lake, they look at her. She gets up, turns around, and runs off the dock. Behavior that was really unusual to the family. And they couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. Now, if I was the dad and I saw this, she didn't hear anything because she had headphones on. Nobody was talking to her because she had headphones on. So what would have prompted her to get up and run off? When as I read this, in my mind I thought, maybe she had to go to the bathroom. Again, she knew this park like her own neighborhood. She'd been here many, many times. Maybe she had to go to the bathroom and she was going to come right back. But the family was real diligent about taking care of her. They immediately rowed in got up on the dock and started to follow the path that they thought she took. Well, the family searched. They split up. They searched for an hour and a half. And at 1:30, they contacted the state park rangers that monitor the park. State park rangers came in. They were told what happened by the family, and they started to search the area with the family. After they quickly confirmed that she's nowhere in the area and they can't find out where she is, they called the Aitkin County Sheriff's Office. Well, it's a big county, but eventually the deputy arrived. And the deputy was introduced to the family by the state park police. And he did a cursory search of the area, same as the park ranger did. Now, these type of things I learned long ago. If I'm the sheriff in a county and I come onto a park, I'm going to rely on that park ranger to show me everything, because they know the park, I don't. I'm going to allow them to tell us where we should go, where we should search, how we should search, not to intervene, let them go. And that's what the deputy did. Search went on for a couple hours. Deputy got with the family. He was told by the parents that Tanya knew the park and the trails very well. They didn't believe that she could get lost. And they also told them that they couldn't understand any reason why she would just get up and take off. She loved her brother a lot. She loved her family a lot. And much later, Tanya had a counselor that helped her. And the family told the counselor that the family had agreed, just before they got on the rowboat, and Tanya was there, that when they got back from the rowboat, they were all going to get in a car and they were going to go into town to a McDonald's and get a sweet treat, like an ice cream or something. And the counselor said there's no way Tanya wouldn't have remembered that and stayed close to make sure she got that treat. So those are the parameters that she went missing by. Pretty unusual. Well, they got the questionnaire completed. Tanya was in pretty good shape. She was a diabetic, which meant she was a type 1 diabetic, so she needed insulin. And that worried them immensely. Well, the search continued late into the night as more deputies arrived. And that primary deputy got a hold of a supervisor and explained the circumstances and stated that it was his opinion they needed a full search and rescue call out the next day. Supervisor agreed, and the motion was placed to get a lot of people there the next day. Now imagine this. You have the family. You're going back to your cabin with no daughter. I couldn't sleep that night. I'd be praying that she just walked in the door. And I'm sure that they were praying for that. It didn't happen. The next day, September 5th, 6 a.m., search and rescue units are arriving. And they got personnel from the St. Louis County Search and Rescue Group. The state park ranger had called in state park employees from other parks. The closest city was McGregor. McGregor Fire Department arrived. And the surrounding sheriff's departments sent canine units. The Aitkin County Sheriff's Office brought their drone unit, and they requested that the state police send their planes to search the area by air. Now, when I looked at this area, and you can look at it by Google Maps, and you look at it from a drone shot, it's really thick from the air. I don't see how you could see much from the air at all. So a drone and planes, I don't see it. I don't see how it's really going to help, unless they were thinking she was in the water, but she had moved away from the water, not towards it when the family saw her. So it's very thick. But on that first day too, the sheriff and the state police decided that they were going to grid search it. So they took out a map of the park and they broke it up into different areas so it could be searched extensively. Weather was cooperating. It was in September. It was warm, and it could be very humid in Minnesota, trust me. So there was really no fear that she was going to die of hypothermia. During the interview portion by the deputy with the family, the mother of Tanya explained that Tanya actually helped the family plan many of the trips that they'd take. She was that mentally attuned to the world. And she said that she couldn't understand why her daughter would have ran away knowing that they were going to McDonald's and the love she had for everybody in the family. It just didn't make any sense. There was nobody else in the area that they saw. And again, remember, she's wearing headphones. So why would a girl that's so keyed on sugar run away? Well, that second day, searchers stayed in the woods from sunup to sundown. It was a massive effort. They found nothing. The next day, September 6th, 40 ground pounders arrived. Drones, planes stayed on, ATVs, multiple canine units. The park was partially shut down. Nobody was seeing anything. And the detectives that were assigned to the case, out of concern for possible abduction, and I've told you this before, when searchers start running into issues with no clues, no evidence, no body, no tracks, they start thinking abduction. Not like you and I are probably thinking abduction, but they're thinking abduction. So they had the state park police pull the CCTV footage out of the roads going in and out of the park to see if there were any vehicles that had left that were suspicious that couldn't be accounted for. And there were not. So in their mind, they stated that they did not believe she was abducted by car out of the park. Key point. Very key point. Now, the searchers keep up. They keep going. And they stayed on point. And it's very hard to keep people. They're just normal people. Searchers are just like you and me. It's very hard to keep them motivated day after day when they're having no luck at all with any evidence at all. You start to feel defeated. You start to feel like, hey, maybe they're not even in this park. Maybe there's something else going on that we don't understand. And their morale starts to come down. Well, the searchers stayed on from the 5th through the 12th. 7 days. They got nothing. After that, the press got a hold of Tanya's mom, named Michelle. Michelle was asked about the search and about what had happened and any success or failure. And she said something to me that is very revealing. She said, it's almost as though she was whisked away. That could be interpreted a lot of different ways. Whisked away, to me, envisions picked up because there were no tracks, picked up because there was no scent trail. That's my own implication. Maybe I'm all wrong. But since there were no tracks and there was no scent trail, I don't know. I kind of think that's where the mom was going with it. On September 13th, the search and rescue teams held a press conference. And they stated that they were now in a recovery mode. Well, that means that they're not looking for a person who's alive. They're looking for a body that's deceased. And they stated that there was nobody, including the family, that believed Tanya could be alive. Now, what they do at this point is one of the things is they stop bringing in scent dogs, and they start bringing in cadaver dogs. Cadaver dogs are trained to pick up the smell of death, decaying flesh. And these dogs are really good. So they start bringing them in. And that was on the 13th. And they bring those dogs in for another 7 days. And they go over the same ground, the same area that they did before. They put them on boats and they put them out on the lake. And why do they do that? Because if a body is in the water and it's dead, it starts to decay. And part of that decay mechanism is that the body produces micro bubbles that come to the surface. And you and I can't smell it, but those dogs can. Thinking maybe she fell in the water somewhere? No. Dogs didn't come up with any scent trail. Dogs didn't come acknowledge anything in the water. Family was devastated. Now the family, it's very expensive to take care of an autistic child or an autistic young adult. It's very expensive. And this family wasn't wealthy. And there was an article about the time they transitioned to a recovery that the family asked for crowdfunding to have them and help them continue to monitor and go to the search. They lived 4 hours away. It was costing them a lot of money. They didn't have it. I think they raised $16,000 to help them stay up there near the search and participate at some level. I think that was good. And I believe in those contributions. So, as September 20th, they termed the search and the recovery. They ran out of locations to search. They ran out of scent trails. They didn't have anything. And that night, there was a candlelight vigil for Tanya at Olaf College for friends and family. It was emotional. There were a lot of people that showed up. Well, now, she's been gone way over a month. Nothing. Where could she go? You think about that. A lot of profile points here, folks. Autistic, water, scent trail, tracks, point of separation. And if I'm right, I have to look at a Minnesota map that we have, but I'm pretty sure she's in a cluster zone of missing people. Now, I want to give you some insight into something. Search and rescue people get this manual. I have one. And it tells you some of the ways to think with real young kids, people with dementia, people with autism. So I want you to understand some of the autism statements they make here. They stated that autistic people can be easily overstimulated. Now stop right there for a second and remember, there's a wide spectrum of autism. Some autistic people are non-communicative. Not Tanya. But you had an added complication because she was wearing headphones. So if she ran away somewhere, did she run away with those headphones on? Because if she did, she couldn't hear anybody. Also, another point is, it says in the manual, they're easily upset in a normal environment. Again, with that wide spectrum of autism, it'd be hard to interpret if these specifically might have impacted Tanya. Some autistic people have a preference to being alive. Some could possibly be evasive. And what I mean by that, I have known several cases where autistic kids hide. And this is probably one of the rare cases where searching for a missing person, if I was making the call, I'd bring the parents out and have them call for the kids. Because they might think if they're in trouble if a stranger is looking for them, but mom or dad are saying, hey, come on out, Billy, let's go get some McDonald's, let's go get an ice cream or something. They'd probably come out for that. Also, they have a preference for being alone. I don't believe that would apply to Tanya, only because her family said how much she loved her family. Also, it was said that they have no real fears or danger. This is the one that's scary, is that they have a fascination with water, lights, and reflection. Reflection. First of all, as a parent, my kids knew how to swim. I think they were 2 years old when we first put them in the water, taught them how to float. I think that as a parent, we owe that to our kids, to teach them that skill. I wish it was a requirement that to graduate from high school, you had to know how to swim. It would save so many lives. Now, it wasn't stated if Tanya was wearing a life preserver or if she knew how to swim, but she ran from water, not toward water. Sometimes autistic people are not responsive to verbal cues, meaning you're out in the woods, you're calling their name, they're not responding. They're prone to running sometimes. Okay, so that's understandable. And it also stated that they have good survivability. I don't understand why that would be there, and I don't understand why their survivability would be better than others. The most common location to find somebody with autism is in a structure. Could be a tent, could be a bathroom. Who knows? They're located 95% of the time in 9 miles or less from the point last seen. That's a long ways, folks. But again, it comes down to, why in the heck didn't canines pick up a scent? They had an absolute spot where she was last seen on that dock. And they had all of her clothes in the cabin so they could put the dog on a good scent for her to find her. I don't get it. Other part of this is, if she was deceased in that area, cadaver dogs should have picked that up. Now, there were, like I stated, there were 2 disappearances in this area that I knew about. Let me bring up this Leech Lake reservation area here. So here is the location where she disappeared. Here's Leech Lake. Now, I was staying in Brainerd down in here, and that's where Ben's camp was at. So I'd go up to Leech Lake all the time. Why would I go up there? Because I knew they had a ton of Bigfoot sightings there. And I got to be friends with the natives. Tribal Bigfoot, I wrote about this. One of the most unusual stories I ever heard is there was a family living in their house, and they backed up to an open space area that went for miles. One morning they wake up, and they had their clothesline draped across the yard, and clothespins still pinned up on the clothesline. And the clothesline is 5 or 6 feet off the ground. And they look outside and they couldn't believe what they saw. Sitting on the ground under the clothesline was a Bigfoot. And it was sitting there, Indian leg style, with a clothespin above it, spinning it on the clothesline. Sat there for a long time, just spinning it and looking at it. I'm not kidding you. 3 family members saw it. There was a very elderly Native American man who spoke only his Indian language. And everyone told me this man had a ton of interesting stories. But he would only talk to a Native American. So I had Harvey Pratt in Oklahoma, who's a Native American chief. I had Harvey fly up to Minnesota, drive out to this location, and meet with this older man. And he was bedridden, but people said that he would talk if Harvey came there. Harvey said he sat by the bed for a good half day talking to the man, trying to get him to open up. He said the man wouldn't really talk. Other people in the area heard I was there, and some other Native Americans came and talked to me. And one man owned a body and fender shop, a high-end one, near that town. He was a tribal member, and he said, Dave, he says, I don't know if you're interested, but do you know that we have a lot of UFO sightings here? I said, no, I've never heard that. And he said, no. Kind of goes hand in hand with the Bigfoot sightings. I said, you're kidding. He said, no, everybody around here knows this. I said, how often do people see a UFO? He says, sometimes we see them hovering above the lakes, and there's like 100 lakes around there. Like 100 feet above the lake, just hovering. Wow. It was an eye-opener hearing some of these stories. And seeing a Bigfoot on that reservation, not unusual at all. Nobody was bothered by it. There were no stories of anybody being hurt by him or injured. It was just like they were a neighbor. So friends, that's my story for today. Tonya Yarmakov, 23, missing September 4th, 2024. Huck and I greatly appreciate you being here. Please come to our website, NA, like North America, NABigfootsearch.com. This giant book, 544 pages, just came out. Bigfoot, Wild Men, and Giants. Archived news articles, 1680 to 1925. I guarantee this will keep your interest. And this is the 3rd edition, a huge edition, way more than the second one. If you have the second one, donate it to your library. Get this one, because this one has all the articles in it that I use and I cite in my presentations at conferences. Yeah. So, be kind. It's a kindness revolution. It costs us nothing to be nice. Maybe I'll make somebody's day. There's old Huck. She's snoring away, eyes closed, monitoring Dad. She's kind of doing a crappy job as being the executive producer. All right, you guys take care. Paulides out.